But it's now time to hear from a woman who is blazing a trail in one of the least diverse areas of British industry, construction. Vital, but something that most people never directly engage with. My guest, our speaker, is a chartered engineer, geologist, and specialist in something called land condition. I'd never heard of it. A bit like Oracy last week, never heard of it. Land condition. Her calling card includes the widening of the M25 and the A406, the North Circular, and other major operations around the UK, including those precious brownfield sites that we all hear about. In recent years, our speaker was invited to become a fellow of the Institution of Civil Engineers and an honorary fellow of RIBA, the Royal Institution of British Architects. Her name is Roni Savage. She is the UK's first black female owner of an engineering company serving the construction industry. Before we meet her, let's take a look at her in action. Run VT.
I run an engineering company. I am the only person who looks like me in the country who runs a business in engineering and construction. I feel that it's so important to encourage more people to realise that there is an opportunity for them. We work in an industry where only 24% across STEM and construction are female and only 2% run their own businesses. Surely we could have more. And the only way that we can do that is to encourage more young girls to take up STEM subjects and come and work in our industry.
Oh yes, please welcome the founder of Jomas Associates, Roni Savage. As you saw, advisor to Rishi. Advisor to Rishi. Go. So you do your president and then we'll have a little chat,
yes,
okay?
Goodness me. I mean, even I was watching that and I got carried away watching. Good morning. It is still morning, isn't it? Yes. It's my pleasure to join you all this morning and just be in the room with such a lineup of esteemed speakers. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed listening to the panel session just before. It's always interesting because I was told you're doing a keynote and then it's a fireside chat. So yes. I've got about, 10, 20 minutes? I'm not sure. So I'm going to have to speed through this very, very quickly. Yes. But what I wanted to do is give you a bit of a snippet into the journey that I've been on. And I hope that it resonates with some of you, but that it inspires others to pursue their dreams without fear or failure. So I'm going to start from the very beginning. And I'm going to rush through over 40 years of living in about 15 minutes. When I was young, I wanted to be a doctor. Actually, my father wanted me to be a doctor. as many people who grew up in the 80s with African parents, I hope that resonates with you, that they thought that medicine was possibly the most prestigious career that you could pursue. But I very quickly realised that I don't like the sight of blood, and I didn't think that medicine was a career for me. So I had a conversation with my mother, to my father's dismay, and we looked very deeply at my strengths and my passion. We looked for a career that enabled me to find solutions to problems, a career that enabled me to apply my love for numbers, my love for maths, and also to spend time in the outdoors. You wouldn't believe it, I got heels on, but actually my career involves me wearing steel-toe boots, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. We found a course at University of Portsmouth in Engineering Geology and Geotechnics, and actually I fell into this because I hadn't considered Engineering Geology before that time. But I applied, I was fortunate to be accepted, and my journey commenced, and I had 3 amazing years at Portsmouth. Some of it was studying, the rest of it. And they retained my interest in engineering geology. So when I graduated, I chose to stay in industry and I applied for jobs and I received a number of offers. I was actually quite fortunate. But I remember 2 distinct offers that I received. One was working as a logging geologist in the oil and gas sector, so going offshore, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And the other one was working as a field engineer in the construction space. As you do, I was distracted by a boy at that point, and I chose to stay in London. So I took the field engineering role in the construction industry. And I remember turning up on my first day, and I was handed a white van, steel-toe boots, a high-vis jacket, and a hard hat. I had no idea that that was what was waiting for me. But I became a white van driver for the first 3 years of my career. I always had my heels in the back of the van, though. And I was sent, very promptly after joining that company, I was sent out to a construction site for 3 months, logging chalk trial pits. I don't know if there's anybody who knows what engineering geology is, but it's looking at what's in the ground. So I was literally staring down trial pits for the first 3 months of my career. But actually, as a 21-year-old girl, which I was at the time, no longer, obviously, I was turning up on construction sites, and I was dealing with digger drivers. I was dealing with drillers, a lot older than me, looked very different to me. And they'd never seen anyone who looked like me turning up on site. They all thought I was lost. And they certainly didn't expect me to be the engineer who was there supervising their work, who was there trying to command their respect. And it was an interesting time for me. And I use the word interesting a lot, and you'll find out why. But I was building and commanding the respect to get the job done by these guys who didn't want me there. But I'd learnt enough, because I grew up in a home with 4 older brothers, how to hold my own with difficult men. It didn't stop it from being difficult. It didn't stop it from being very challenging. And I do wonder now if I would have given up if I didn't have my family support and if I didn't have the childhood that I enjoyed or suffered, thanks to my brothers. Years later, I worked my way up the ladder rapidly. I handed back the white van, I moved home, I changed jobs, and somehow, by miracle, I had a visit from Angel Gabriel. Does anybody know who Angel Gabriel is? Okay, so you know what happened. Nothing to do with me. But I found out that I was with my first child. I was ambitious, career-focused. You don't know who Angel Gabriel was.
She became, yes.
I assumed you knew who Angel Gabriel was, so you don't read the Bible as much. But yeah, anyway, I found out I was with my first child, and at that point I was ambitious, I was young, I was career-focused, and I was told that having a child will derail all of this. But I decided at that point that I was going to keep my baby, but I needed to fight twice as hard. So while I was pregnant, I started working on my first chartership, and I was determined to prove that I could do both. I could be a mum, and I could be a career woman. So I went on maternity leave. I went off for 4 months only, starting on the day that my son was born. I remember I was on my laptop working from home when I went into labour. And I remember doing a quick handover from the labour ward on the phone to my boss. It was crazy, and I certainly wouldn't recommend that work ethic in 2023. Just so you know, I don't recommend that as an employer. I came back to work after maternity leave, and 2 years later, the Angel Gabriel appeared again. Now you know what he does. Now you know what he does. And again, nothing to do with me, but that was 16 years ago. And this time I went on leave for longer. I was my employer's nightmare. Things have changed. But I was determined to carry on. I ensured that I had support at home, and I went back to work when my second son was 6 months old. But this time around, I had 2 young children. One was 3 and 6 months, and I was back to work full time. But when I was home with the boys, I made sure that I was fully present. And when at work, I worked my, under 18s, I worked my arse off. Sorry, apologies, Mum. But my mum was and is my rock, and I don't think I would be where I am today if she wasn't there. At the same time, I obtained my master's degree by distance learning months after my second son was born. By the time I went back to work, the company I was working for had sold to a larger company, so I was headhunted, and that was the only reason I moved on from that company. And I took a role where I found myself as associate director of one of the largest engineering companies in the country. Young black woman, 2 children. I use the word interesting again. That was an interesting experience, because I went from a company that was incredibly supportive to being within this large organisation. I don't do negative, so I'll stop there. But I really believe that you make lemonade when you're throwing lemons. So in 2009, after years in industry, I decided to go it on my own, and Jomas was born. Jomas was born with a vision to put purpose and people first, and to deliver a service to the construction industry which prioritises quality, value, customer service, and people. So when we talk about, just listening to Carlton's presentation, when you speak about the value and the quality that you get from people of ethnic minority, it's absolutely phenomenal. I know, because I know what we offer. Anyway, when I started my business, I stupidly expected that I would have full control of my time, and any entrepreneur in the room will tell you that that's a myth. But again, I did something I seem to be very, very good at, and I'm sure you understand the theme by now, but I found myself, again, with child, 3 years in. We do have a TV, I promise. But when you run a business, maternity leave just doesn't exist. So that was another interesting time in my life. And my mother was there again, which I'm really grateful for. In fact, she'll accompany me for site visits. And I had meetings where Mum would come with me with my baby in the car, enable me to go off and have the meeting, and then come back into the car and perform my cow duties. I realized, though, at that point that I had to recruit and build a team. It does feel like you're a cow when you've got lots of children, but anyway. But I realized that I had to recruit and I had to build a team around me. So at that point, I was reliant on freelancers. But my third child was born, when he was born, it essentially forced me to think bigger and grow my company. And it goes back to something that you said earlier about taking a challenge and turning it into an opportunity. Most challenges that I've been faced with, I have turned to an opportunity. I have to say that at that point, I also signed a contract with Angel Gabriel, never to visit me again. Jomas has grown over the last 13 years, providing geotechnical and geoenvironmental services to the construction industry. We now have a team of 25. We have our head office in Uxbridge. And we bought our own office 18 months ago. So it's been an incredible journey. I'm mum to 3 amazing boys who are now 19, 16, and 10, and it's been a balancing act, but one I couldn't have done without a great team and a similar support structure at home. So that gives you an insight. I am going to round up, I promise. That gives you an insight into the early doors, balancing motherhood and having a career. And it's not a walk in the park, but nothing good comes easy. I just want to share another chunk of experience. And again, it relates back to some of the stats that you shared earlier. In 2017, I took part in the Goldman Sachs program. Do you know the Goldman Sachs program? Anyone in the room? Fantastic. 10KSB, life-changing. At that point, I never thought much about me not having photos, and you spoke about this earlier, not having photos of myself on social media or the internet. I just didn't have photos, and I never really thought about it. I just put my head down, and I grew the business, and we got to 1 million and 2 million and so on, and then I went on the program. And at that point, I was challenged by my coach on the Goldman Sachs program, and she just said, "Why don't you have a presence? Why don't you have a photo? Any photos online?" And I realised that I hadn't put my name to my face to the name because I couldn't see anyone who looked like me ahead of me. I work in an industry where only 13% of the workforce is female, 2% are black, and nobody else runs an engineering company the size of mine that looks like me. So I didn't put my face to the name. And I hid behind Roni Savage, which presumably sounds like a white man. In fact, I had a meeting last week where I turned up on a Zoom call and the man almost fell out this chair. I'm pleased that I was challenged, though. I'm pleased because I realized that I'd achieved something that no one else had. No one else who looked like me had. There are plenty of others who have. And I had the responsibility to be the one that those who came after me could see. I had that responsibility, and I took it with both hands. I put a photo on LinkedIn, I put my photo on Twitter, on my website, and I promise you that night I didn't sleep a wink. The imposter syndrome in me was in panic mode. And when I speak honestly, because I know that a lot of us have a facade of everything being together, but many of us do suffer from imposter syndrome. But the opposite of my fears happened. I suddenly found others reaching out to me as I was invited to speak at events. I was invited to mentor orders. I wasn't doing this 6 years ago. I was nominated for awards. I remember I entered into a world that felt like a dream. I thought I shed enough tears, and I did cry dealing with challenges in the construction industry because of all the issues that were thrown at me as a young engineer. But I cried each time with joy when I was handed an award. I remember my first award in 2018, which I simply attended because I got an invite to a lovely hotel and a 3-course dinner. And that evening, I won 2 awards, Entrepreneur of the Year and Business of the Year. I was actually reading a text on my phone when the lady tapped me next to me and said, "That's your face on the screen." I wasn't expecting to win anything. And the week after, I was named Black British Business Person of the Year. I was being interviewed by London Live and Forbes and LBC. It was just, I just had so many pinch me moments. I mean, I won Consultant of the Year and most distinguished winner of the European Women in Construction and Engineering Awards. I mean, goodness me. All I was doing was just working and taking care of children. Being on the Black Power list for the last 3 years, I was named most influential woman in construction last year by NFB. I cried my eyes out. But it's not just about the awards, it's about the incredible platform that I have to challenge stereotypes. An engineering boss can be a black woman in heels. But I'm most satisfied by the opportunity I have to support, to mentor, to inspire the next generation, and to collaborate with universities and colleges. I took a phone call in 2019 to join Lord Sugar's advisory panel on the BBC Apprentice. I mean, sometimes I get some of these calls and I think, is it April 1st? But I took my mum and dad with me to the NatWest Awards when I won, and I remember my dad shedding a tear and hiding it and pretending that he wasn't, but they caught him on camera. And you know, when we were sort of in the car, my parents reminded me, and this will resonate with many of you in the room, my parents reminded me of how in the 60s they were segregated in public spaces due to the colour of their skin, and how proud they were that their child had this opportunity. It's been a journey. Now I hold, you asked before, is there FSB in the room? I'm policy chair for construction for the FSB. I have the opportunity to lobby with ministers, hence why I've met with the last 3 Prime Ministers at number 10. And I say this and I share my journey with you because I hope it demonstrates that we can create something very, very big from very, very little. I've built all I have from nothing by saying yes to opportunities, even when the propositions scared the living daylights out of me. I built my confidence by testing my experience and my knowledge, hence why I have my 3 charterships, being a chartered geologist, chartered engineer, more letters after my name than I need. And it's just amazing. And at the end of the month, I pick up my honorary doctorate from from University of Portsmouth, and I finally get to be the doctor that my dad always wanted. My mindset is focused, it's positive, it's determined, focusing on being the best, putting your best foot forward, focusing on me, not on anybody else. I want to be the best at what I do. And it's not about trying to impress anybody, it's about trying to impress me, so that when I look in the mirror, I'm proud of who I see in front of me. So I'm going to round off with a call to action. I thrive on measurable impact. So what I ask is that every single one of us in this room, that we be the change that we want to see, that we are visible so that the future generation can see us, even when it makes you feel uncomfortable. I am as introverted as they come, and my friends know this. Trying to get me to come out is very, very difficult. But I know that I have a job to do by being visible. So even if you're the only one in the room that looks like you, stand up, stand tall, stand out with substance. Because if you don't believe in yourself, no one will. And you will only ever fail when you stop trying. It's also okay to delegate and to get support where you need it, because I truly, truly believe that we can have it all, but not without support and not without hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Want to stay there? Thank you very much.